My wife cheated on me with our accountant, then lost $250, $0 of our savings in a shady investment. Now she's suing me for half the house and everything we own after I caught her laundering the money. I never thought I'd be sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be nothing like the woman I married. Honestly, I had always thought we had a good thing going. We met in college, got married after a few years of dating, and for a while I believed we were happy. But the signs started creeping in, small at first, little lies, secretive phone calls, her being unusually distant. I brushed it off, told myself she was just stressed or busy with work. But deep down, I knew something was off. It all hit me like a ton of bricks when I stumbled upon her phone one night. I was in the bathroom, grabbing a towel, and I saw a notification pop up on her screen. It was from some guy named Jason, and the message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about you all day." My stomach clenched. I didn't even need to read the rest. I knew then that was cheating on me. I waited until she was asleep, then snuck into her phone. I needed to see more. And what I found was worse than I expected. There were dozens of messages, explicit photos, plans to meet up, and even some flirty texts that made my blood boil. It wasn't just a one-time thing. She'd been cheating for months. The worst part, I found out she'd been lying about her whereabouts, telling me she was working late or at the gym when she was actually with Jason. When I confronted her the next morning, she looked me straight in the eye and lied. Said Jason was just a client, that they were working on a project and I was overreacting. She called me paranoid, insecure, said I was imagining things, but I knew better. I had proof. Her phone had become a treasure trove of betrayal, and I felt like my world was crashing down. The shock was immense. I'd always trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. How could she do this to me? I had given her everything, my time, my money, my love, and she was out there screwing around with some guy from her office. And it wasn't just the cheating that hurt, it was the lies, the deception, the way she looked me in the face and lied about it. That betrayal cut deeper than I ever thought possible. But here, where things got even messier, after I found out about Jason, I started digging into her finances. Something wasn't adding up. Had always been good with money, she managed our accounts, made smart investments, but I noticed strange transactions. Large sums disappearing from our savings account. I thought maybe she was just being reckless, but then I found out she'd been laundering money from some shady investment she'd convinced me to get into. It was a scam, and she was right in the middle of it. She'd lost us $250, $0, our entire savings, and I didn't even know she was capable of that level of deceit. The worst part, she's now suing me for half the house and everything we own. Said I'm trying to take her down because I found out about her cheating and her shady dealings. She's spinning this story that I'm the bad guy, that I'm controlling, that I'm trying to ruin her life. But the truth is, I never wanted any of this. I just wanted honesty, loyalty, a partner I could trust. Instead, I got betrayal, lies, and a mountain of debt she helped create. It's been a whirlwind of anger, sadness, and confusion. I keep asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I missed all the signs. But I also know I can't change what's happened now. All I can do is figure out what's next. How do you rebuild after something like this? How do you forgive someone who lied about everything? Your marriage, your finances, your very trust. I'm still trying to process it all, but one thing is clear. My life has been turned upside down, and I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from this betrayal. After discovering Safair and her involvement in the financial mess she'd created, I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The anger was raw, but beneath it, there was a sinking feeling of betrayal so deep that it made me question everything I thought I knew about her, about us. I spent days just staring at the walls, replaying every moment, every conversation, trying to find some clue I'd missed. But the truth was staring me right in the face, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I remember sitting in the living room one night, staring at the pile of bills and bank statements I'd printed out. That's when I realized she'd been laundering money through some shady investment firm she'd convinced me to trust. I had always thought she was savvy with money, but this was something else entirely. She'd been funneling our savings into some kind of fraudulent scheme, and I had no idea. The $250, $0 we'd saved over the years, gone in a blink. It made me sick to my stomach. I felt physically ill knowing she'd gambled away our future, lied to me for months, and now was trying to turn it around and sue me for half the house. The next step was confronting her again. I knew I had to hear her side, even if I didn't believe a word of it. When I sat her down, her face was cold, defensive. She spun some story about how she was trying to protect us, how she thought she could fix everything. Without me knowing, she claimed she was just making some investments and it got out of control. She insisted she'd only been doing what she thought was best, that she didn't mean to hurt me. I looked at her and I saw that bitchy smirk she always had when she was trying to manipulate someone. That's when I knew she was lying, again. I asked her outright, why did you do it? Why were you cheating on me with Jason? And why did you lie about the money? She rolled her eyes, made some half-assed excuse about how I was paranoid, how I didn't trust her, that I was just jealous. I could see the anger bubbling up inside me, but I kept my voice calm for now. I told her I knew everything and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it, that I'd find out the truth no matter what. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. It was like my entire life had been a lie. I'd always thought I was the one providing stability, the one working hard to keep us afloat. While she was sneaking around, lying and draining our savings, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. My mind kept circling back to the moment I found her messages, the explicit photos, the plans she'd made with Jason. I kept asking myself how I missed all of it, how I could have been so blind. And then the anger turned into a kind of numbness. I realized I couldn't keep living in this chaos. I started thinking about what I wanted to do next. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after all this. But I also knew she was a manipulator and she'd probably fight me tooth and nail for everything, including the house. That's when I decided I had to take control of the situation. I started documenting everything, the messages, the bank transactions, her lies. I wanted proof, a clear trail of her deception, just in case I had to fight her legally. Meanwhile, was still playing her games, acting like she was the victim. She'd call me names, accuse me of being controlling, and even threaten to sue me for half the house. That's when I realized she was trying to spin this story that I was the bad guy, that I was ruining her life, but I knew the truth. She was the one who lied, cheated, stole our money, and now was trying to turn the tables. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had enough evidence to make her pay, and I was ready to fight for what was mine. The pain of all this is hard to put into words. I'd loved her once. I believed in us. But now I see her for what she really is, a manipulative, dishonest, selfish woman who only cared about herself. It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing I was naive enough to trust her completely. But I also realized I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to focus on moving forward, on protecting what was left of my life and my sanity. And that meant preparing for a fight, not just for the house, but for my own dignity. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers, financial advisors, and endless nights lying awake, trying to piece together what my life had become. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. One day I was a man happily married, thinking we were building a future. The next, I was staring at legal documents, trying to understand how she was planning to take half of everything I owned, even after all the lies, the cheating, and the shady money she'd lost us. I started digging deeper into her dealings with the accountant, Mark. I'd always trusted him. He was a decent guy, or at least I thought he was. But it turned out he was just another piece in her game. I hired a private investigator after I found out she'd been laundering money through some offshore accounts. Turns out, she'd been funneling our savings into a web of shell companies and shady investments. I uncovered that she'd been meeting with Mark late at night, not just for work, but for discussions that clearly weren't professional. I remember walking into her office one day, unannounced. I needed to see her, needed to confront her face to face. When I opened the door, there she was, sitting with Mark, laughing at some joke he'd told. Her hand was resting on his knee, and her eyes sparkled in a way I'd never seen before. That was the moment I knew I'd been right all along. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was actively lying, scheming, and betraying everything we'd built. I snapped a picture of them together. That photo became my proof, my ammunition. I also learned from the investigator that she'd lost $250, $0 of our savings in some shady investment scheme. I still remember the sick feeling in my stomach when I saw the bank statements. Had convinced me to put our money into a sure thing, a high-yield investment that promised quick returns, but it was a scam, a scheme. She'd been laundering money from it, and it all came crashing down. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she be so reckless, so dishonest? I'd trusted her with everything, and she'd turned around and used me. The legal battle was heating up. She filed papers claiming I was trying to control her, that I was abusive, that I was trying to take her rights away. Her attorney spun some story about how I was the bad guy, how I'd been controlling and manipulative. But I had the evidence, texts, emails, bank statements, the photo with Mark. I knew I'd win. If it came to court, still it was exhausting. Every day was a new fight, a new battle to hold onto what little I had left. Meanwhile's attitude was bitchy and dismissive. She'd throw tantrums, call me paranoid, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. She'd lie right to my face, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that I was just jealous or insecure. But I could see through her act now. She was cold, calculating, and ruthless. She didn't care about me or what she'd done to our marriage. All she cared about was saving her own skin and fighting to keep what she thought was hers. I started to see a pattern. She'd manipulate everyone around her, her friends, her family, even the lawyers. She'd lie, spin stories, and play the victim. That's why I decided I had to be the one to expose her. I gathered every piece of evidence I could find, kept detailed records, and prepared myself for the inevitable court showdown. I knew she'd do everything to win, even if it meant lying under oath or twisting the truth. At this point, I was emotionally drained. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I had been a fool to trust her blindly. I'd given her my love, my money, my life, and she'd used all of it to feed her own greed and selfishness. I'd learned that some people are capable of incredible deception, and you have to be prepared for that. The hardest part was coming to terms with the fact that she might take everything, our house, our savings, my peace of mind. But I also knew I had to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let her win. I'd fight her in court, I'd protect what was mine, and I'd start rebuilding from the ashes of this disaster. Because at the end of the day, I still had my integrity, and that's what mattered most. The court date finally came, and I can't even describe how draining it was. Showed up with her bitchy smirk, trying to act like the innocent victim, as if she hadn't been caught red-handed lying, cheating, laundering money, and scheming behind my back. Her lawyer played the victim too, claiming I was trying to control her, that I was abusive and jealous, but I had all the evidence to shut that down. During the proceedings, I presented the proof I'd gathered, the messages with Jason, the photos of her with Mark, the bank statements showing the illegal transactions, and the pictures I took of her with Mark in her office. The judge looked at everything carefully, and I could see her lawyer starting to sweat. Kept insisting she was innocent, that she was just trying to save us, that all those investments and the affair were just misunderstandings. But I knew better. I saw her true face now. The judge listened to both sides, and I could tell she was skeptical of stories. It was clear had lied to everyone, me, her family, even her own attorney. I felt a strange sense of relief when the judge announced that she found enough evidence to proceed with a full investigation into the financial fraud and the cheating. It was a small victory, but it felt good to finally see her exposed. But wasn't finished. She started throwing tantrums, yelling at me in court, calling me a controlling psycho. She even claimed I was trying to ruin her reputation because I was jealous of her success. That was the moment I realized she had no remorse, no intention of taking responsibility for what she'd done. She was just trying to save herself, even if it meant destroying me in the process. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my composure, but inside I was furious. How could she be so manipulative, so cold? I'd given her my trust, my love, and she'd spat in my face. I felt like I'd been betrayed by the woman I thought I knew. I kept thinking about how she lied about everything, our marriage, the money, her affair. It all felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The judge eventually ordered an audit of all her financial dealings, and I knew that the truth was about to come out in full force. This lawyer was trying to spin it, claiming she was just a victim of her own bad decisions, but I wasn't buying it. I knew she'd been lying from the start. I also learned that her plan was to try and claim half the house, saying that I'd controlled her and that she was entitled to everything. That made me sick. She thought she could get away with everything because she was charming and manipulative. I felt a mix of relief and rage. Relief because the truth was finally starting to surface, and rage because I'd been so blind for so long. I'd loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was: a liar, a cheat, a thief. I knew this wasn't over yet, but I also knew I had the upper hand. I'd fought hard to get here, and I wasn't about to back down now. I was ready to fight for what was mine, for my dignity and for my future. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that some people will lie, cheat, and steal everything from you, but you've got to be willing to stand up and fight back. The aftermath of the court hearing was a whirlwind, and honestly, it felt like I was stuck in some bizarre, never-ending nightmare. This lawyer kept pushing to get her a bigger share of everything, claiming she was entitled to half the house because she was married to a successful man, even though her own lies and scams had caused us to lose everything. The judge was firm, but I knew this was only the beginning. Accusations about control and abuse were just her latest tricks to manipulate the system and protect herself. I moved quickly to gather everything I could: more evidence of her laundering money, the emails where she discussed her affair with Jason, the hidden bank accounts, and the shady offshore transactions. It was like peeling back layers of lies, each one more shocking than the last. I also hired a forensic accountant to dig into her finances. What they uncovered was staggering. She'd been funneling our money into fake companies, offshore accounts, and even buying luxury goods with stolen funds. The $250 she lost us, it was just the tip of the iceberg. She'd been running schemes for months, and I was furious learning that she'd betrayed me not just emotionally but financially too. Meanwhile, his attitude grew even more bitchy and dismissive. She'd sit in court, rolling her eyes, smirking at me like she thought she was untouchable. She'd call me paranoid, jealous, and claim I was trying to ruin her reputation because I'd exposed her lies. Her words stung, but I knew better. I'd seen her true colors now. She was manipulative, selfish, and totally unrepentant. It was like she thought she could just lie her way out of everything, but I had the proof. One day I caught her in a lie about her whereabouts. I had a friend follow her, and it turned out she'd been meeting Jason again, even after she swore she'd cut ties. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just a cheat. She was a compulsive liar and a manipulator. I felt a cold fury take over. I wasn't going to let her get away with this anymore. I started preparing for the final legal push, knowing that I had enough evidence to completely dismantle her claims and prove her guilt. The financial battle was brutal, but I knew I couldn't let her control the narrative. I had to be strategic. I filed for full custody of the house and demanded an accounting of all her financial dealings. I also threatened to sue her for fraud and breach of contract. Her reaction was predictable. She accused me of trying to ruin her life, but I didn't care. I was done playing her game. Every lie, every betrayal was on record now. I was going to let her walk away with a dime more than what was legally mine. Emotionally, I was drained. I'd loved her once, believed in us, but now I could see that she was entirely self-serving. She lied about everything, and honestly, I felt betrayed to my core. Still, I knew I had to keep fighting. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. I had to stand firm. Every day, I reminded myself that I was doing this to protect myself, to protect what little dignity I had left. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about finally putting an end to her lies and starting over. Looking back, I realize how much I trusted her too much. I let her control the narrative, and she used that trust against me. But now, I see clearly. I've learned that some people will do anything to get what they want, even if it means destroying everything in their path. The road ahead isn't easy, but I'm determined to rebuild, to get my life back. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore the red flags and Always protect yourself, because some betrayals cut so deep, they change everything forever. In the end, I walked out of that courtroom with a mixture of relief and profound disillusionment. Lies had been laid bare, her manipulations exposed for everyone to see. The judge ordered her to pay back every cent she'd stolen and laundered, and she was hit with a hefty fine for her fraudulent schemes. The house was awarded to me, and I finally had some semblance of peace, though it's not the same peace I imagined when I first said, "I do." Looking back, I realize how much I was blinded by love and trust. I thought I knew her, but she was a master of deception. Her bitchy, manipulative attitude was just a shield for her greed and selfishness. The betrayal tore me apart emotionally, but I learned a brutal lesson. Trust must be earned, and sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. What scares me most is how easily she lied, how convincingly she played the victim, and how she thought she could get away with everything. Her actions cost us everything: our savings, our stability, and nearly our marriage. But I also learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to fight back, to stand up for yourself, and to reclaim your life. It's painful, it's messy, and it's exhausting, but it's worth it. Now I'm rebuilding. I've started therapy, focusing on healing from the emotional trauma. I've cut all ties with, and I'm trying to move forward without bitterness, although I admit it's a struggle some days. I know I'll never fully forget what she did, but I refuse to let her define my future. The lessons I've learned are harsh but necessary. Never ignore the signs, keep meticulous records, and trust but verify everything. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't let love blind you to the truth. Protect yourself, your money, and your heart. Because some betrayals are so deep, they threaten to destroy everything you hold dear. But remember, even in the worst storms, you can find the strength to rebuild. And someday, you'll look back and realize that surviving this, though incredibly painful, has made you stronger than you ever thought possible.